It's good to be home after a long adventure. Welcome back everyone to our Minecraft survival world, and thanks for checking out this video. Today we'll be going around and adding some details to our existing builds using some of the new blocks we got in the last episode. If you didn't catch it, we essentially updated this entire world from 1.16.5 to 1.21.4. And so today we're going to mix it up a little bit by going to various locations around our archipelago here. So right now we're at home and we'll be going over to the Alchemist Island. But yeah, it'll be a little bit of a deviation from the traditional work on one thing per episode. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. And depending on how long these little builds take, I would like to also figure out some of this new content and see how some of it works. I'm also very happy to report that since the last episode, I figured out how to make pack mud. So you need the mud block in addition to the wheat. So we're good to go on making those blocks. Alright, to start out the episode, I want to fly right over here to this very small little island outcrop. So there's the windmill island over there. And previously this was just a small sand dune with nothing on it other than maybe, I think, a dried bush or two? Not much. But as you can see, I've built this little gravestone, which was actually a design that I found on the Detailed Craft subreddit. And they envisioned that this would be an old sign, but I wanted to convert it to a grave for our two pigs that were originally on the island, but unfortunately met their untimely demise, I believe around in episode 8 or so. So right when we discovered the island, or where we built our base, we were being attacked by a zombie and it was lit on fire. And it was about to take us out, but the pig blocked it from delivering the final blow to us. And so I named these pigs Brave and Champ, but unfortunately they continued to take fall damage as we built out the base. And I only had the remains of one of them, which I've actually stored in here. So Champ is now resting in peace over on this island. But yeah, I just really liked the simplicity of this build and just had no real other purpose for this island because it's really just sitting here in between our base islands as well as the continent with the Alchemy Island over there in the distance. You can see the 500 subscriber monument right there. Anyways, so I just wanted to share this that I built in between episodes, and I gotta say I really like candles. I'm so happy to be able to use these, and we were able to get quite a bit of wax, so we can make plenty of these in the coming episode. So in terms of this grave build, my only complaint, or I guess thing that I want to change, is maybe the foundation, because it was originally just a sand mound, and I've added this dirt and rooted dirt here on the top, so it does look a bit odd to me from the distance, especially with shaders where you can see it underwater. And even without shaders, it's kind of out of place, or it's a bit clashing. So maybe I was thinking I could just update this and make the whole thing dirt, but I'm really curious as to hearing what all of you think, because I'm not really the best builder and it's always better to have more advice and feedback than not. But anyways, just wanted to share this cool little build. Okay, heading back home, you can see that Bob has recently visited. But we also have all of these new chests on the beach. And these are the results of our caving and adventuring in the last episode, just gathering all these new resources and keeping them separate from our bulk storage, simply because we don't have any room anymore in this base to store new items. We're pretty much maxed out in terms of chest and storage capacity over here. And while I would like to start working on this problem immediately, I'm a little torn as to whether or not we should build out this island and the ocean area around it, or just simply make a new base entirely. The current challenge with this area is that it's not in super close proximity to new chunks. Let me just go over to the map real quick to explain. Right, so we are over here on this small archipelago, and while there are new chunks to the south as well as the northwest, where we've been gathering resources has been way over here. And so there are other islands over here, and I think there's a bit of warm sea right in the middle, right there by that large island. So perhaps this is an area that we could build a new base in. I'm like truly undecided at this point because I do like the terrain here and I would like to build it out more, but that also necessitates traveling back and forth to get all of these new blocks. So with that in mind, I would really love to hear what all of you think about whether or not we should stay here and continue to build, or just make a new base in the area that's within close proximity to all the new chunks. And so we will not be working on storage for all of these new items in this episode, as to give everyone time to weigh in as to what they think the best course of action is for the series and the future of the Let's Play. So let's head over to our Alchemist City Island right over here. Alright, as it's been a while since we've been in this area, here's where things stand. So we built out the city, and we more or less left the oasis untouched. And we have two chest monsters over here, one around this natural sand hill, and then all of the red sand resources we've collected from a faraway Badlands biome. So what I want to do is I want to update the oasis portion of the city. It's not that this current water feature is bad per se, but we have a lot more blocks and decorative items that we can use to detail this area now that we've updated the world. So things such as like moss carpet, moss blocks, all the clay, dripstone, these kinds of items we can use to decorate this area now rather than just have it clay and sand. And then also, because naturally in an oasis you would see a lot of ground hugging vegetation on the shores, or the areas where the water is like evaporating, or there's high moisture content in the air, I'll do my best to implement a little bit more greenery bordering the oasis. And then also putting a little bit more thought into the design, it doesn't really make sense that there's sand at the basin of this thing, because that would just drain immediately, and so perhaps we can put some more water retaining blocks at the basin of this. A little bit of sand is okay because you're naturally going to have some sediment, but we'll make this look a little bit more detailed and speckle in a little bit of igneous rock, such as like diorite, which we've used over here, and then also downstairs in the trading hall. I'm not planning on modifying these palm trees since they are not easy to make, and even though I've improved my custom tree making abilities, these are really challenging trees to just make in general. Additionally, I'm going to keep the body of water the same size. Since we're still forming the paths around the east part of this area, I think that would just be wise not to go too far in terms of increasing the size of this thing, since I do plan to path out this, and as well as this eventually once we start working on this tower structure. And as you might see, there is a little bit of polished sandstone there, and so originally when I was first building this thing, I actually dug out a small area here, which I'm not really sure what I was planning on building here, but I did want to make like a secret passageway underneath the oasis. And so that's there currently. And so what I was thinking, as I have raised the concern that I do not like this chest monster that has surrounded our sand hill, I think this presents a really nice opportunity to relocate the chest monster into an underground cellar, wherein that will be the storage area for this over here. And then also I want to update this sand hill, because I do like the positioning of it. It's at a nice location within the city, and then we can also add paths around this as well. So that's what I'm going to focus on for the first part of this episode, is updating this oasis and updating this sand hill. So I do want to modify this hill such that it looks like the natural sandstone structures that are carved by wind, and they kind of resemble either a mushroom shape or a very cone-like structure, and you can find these in the Utah desert. And so that's what I'm going to be using for my inspiration. And yeah, I'll get to updating this, and hopefully you enjoyed this time lapse. Alright, kind of a short time lapse, but hopefully entertaining all the same. So this is what I made from the idea of a windswept desert rock. So even though it's night, you can imagine that during the day it's pretty hot in the desert, and while this does provide a little bit of shelter from the harsh sun during the day, it's not much, so this necessitates the construction of this overhanging roof to the right. Underneath we have a little bit of storage here, not much, but just enough to give us a little bit of space and breathing room if we say need to craft some items. We also have crafting table, an anvil, as well as this stone cutter over here. Overall, just trying to keep this awning over here consistent with the rest of the village. And of course, we have the red sandstone as it fits in with our previous lore of this being a block that absorbs heat, so providing shelter to us as we're doing things during the day, during the hot desert sun. And then also having the dark prismarine, which keeps the local area cold by virtue of it being a block that decreases the local entropy. Anyways, in theme with updating the world, we have also incorporated the new blocks, so mangrove roots, a little bit of the roots, as well as azalea leaves and the mangrove roots. I think this really helps to modernize the build a tad and signifies the age of this compared to the rest of the village that was constructed while in version 1.16. Not a huge build, but it serves its purpose as being a workstation and just giving us a little bit of extra room if we need it to make some of these new blocks. In theory, this should preclude the formation of new chest monsters. Yes, I'm looking at this, but we'll see how this works in practice, of course. And so another detail that I wanted to incorporate, since this is a fairly small build, is the interactive nature of the structure. So you can see a ladder here, and above I also made the small tunnel that allows us to get to the top of the structure there. And the reason for this is I do like it when things are interactable. So for example, you can climb up here, get on the roof and get a vantage point, what have you. But you can't really get up there. And so that's why I wanted to add this little ladder down here, which I'll extend up. But as you can see, the top of the structure is also spawn proof by using slabs as well as carpet. And this is something I'm starting to learn to do with all my builds, just due to the fact that it's not really fun to have a creeper just drop down from the roof and, blow you to smithereens. So yeah, that's one thing I added in this build, was making it interactable and climbable. I think that makes it a little bit more fun. And as you're exploring the world, having these kinds of things it encourages exploration and adventuring. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Small build, but it serves its purpose. Okay, so moving on to the Oasis, you probably noticed that 1, it's not the same size, and 2, it's not decorated. So let me explain. So first of all, I was thinking of having a small little window on the bottom of the Oasis to give some light to the storage room below. But because we only had 2 passageways here, it was looking really weird from below due to the asymmetry. And no matter what, it just wasn't looking very good. And I'm really getting chewed up by phantoms. Let me sleep. Okay, so as I was saying, due to the asymmetric nature of the windows and providing light to the space below, no matter what I was doing, it looked really odd in the room below. So let me go over here to show you the entrance. So what I conceived is it goes around the back, and I realized this is a little bit awkward. And so what I'm thinking of doing is extending the path from there and have it go around here. So it's kind of like a loop around the structure, and then have it continue around the Oasis here. In any case, so when you go down here, which is completely unfinished, you'll be greeted with this storage room, and I've preemptively put the Lightmatica scheme up because this is my design concept, at least in the present stage. And so the idea is that you come down here, and that you have this nice symmetric daylight view or window, and you can see the fish above, which I've removed the 2 salmon because I don't want anything to happen to them during the construction, since those are very, very old animals. And so the idea is that the storage room will be down here, final design TBD, but essentially it will have some natural lighting and will kind of feel like lush and bright area despite being underground. So pretty similar to the lush cave system you would find in the natural world generation, but with a spin that this is a drier variation due to the desert climate above. And then just to give you a bit more context of where we are underground, so you have the Mason Hall over here, and then you have the fish kind of market area over here to the right relative to the entry point. And so what I'm thinking is I can extend this room a little bit more in this direction, but I can also open it out here. And I think that this will help break up the monotony in this room because the walls are pretty bare bones. And it's a good opportunity to use this other side of the trading hall, since I did design the areas where the villagers reside to be tradable from both sides. So by connecting these 2 areas and opening up the wall over here, I think this will connect this underground area and provide a separate entranceway from that part of the city over there. And then another reason why I wanted to go with this lush kind of greener theme is because, and I've talked about this before in previous builds, what I want to do long term is beneath this monument structure is build a large freshwater grotto. So starting kind of right there and just occupying this area underneath the village. And the lore is that that's where all the fresh water comes from, and perhaps we can incorporate more of these magical / technology lore considerations into that area. But then also, as this storage area is in proximity to this very lush and life-springing area, it incorporates some of the same vibe and aesthetics. So that's where things stand right now. Definitely I have some work cut out ahead of me because this room is leaving much to be desired. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kind of stage this area by replacing the ceiling with smooth sandstone, making this all level, because I do want to also incorporate some variation in the height of the ceiling so it's not this flatland structure above. And then I'll go about constructing some storage chests and areas so we can fit all of these chests and all the items inside down below, as well as these items which I'm using to build out the city over here. Maybe provide a couple of staging spots for shulkers as well, since I am starting to use those pretty heavily. And then of course some items down here that are also used for the construction of these areas. But overall, it looks pretty good. Definitely more so with shaders. I'll get to work on staging the room, and then I'll probably do another time lapse, constructing the storage room, and then finally finish up with the oasis and the pathing above. I realize I'm spending quite a bit of time at this area, so hopefully we have time to tackle one more build in this episode, but we'll see. Right now the video is currently I want to say 12 minutes, so we'll see how that goes. But anyways, I'll get to work and catch you all after the second time lapse. Enjoy! And with that, that's a wrap. I most definitely had a lot of fun with this build, even though it kind of ballooned into a much larger project than initially planned. In spite of that, I think this area really built out nicely into the Lush cave, kind of like cellar that we wanted for this. I don't want to call it a storage room because I said I wasn't going to build a storage room in this episode, but yeah, it's a storage room. So for this second time lapse, aside from this center area, I really built everything on the fly, and I ended up scrapping that vegetation arch because it felt kind of out of place, and instead I wanted to have more structural support, and so I added these very intricate looking pillars. They might not be the sturdiest of supports from a civil engineering perspective, but they are appealing to look at, and I do enjoy the asymmetry of these things. Really, the goal of these was to experiment with vertical depth and just give something pleasing to the eye. And because this is a pretty circular, constricted space, I wanted to make as much variation in this room as possible, which is also why I added these root systems and rooted dirt to the ceiling. We also have our characteristic anti-entropy block that cools the surrounding area, and you can also imagine, in accordance with the lore, that because this area is cold, this prevents the oasis from above from evaporating. I think that was a nice sprinkle of lore while also giving a bit of variation to the ceiling. Going back to that vertical variation that I was talking about, I ended up lowering the center portion just to make the ceiling a little bit higher, but then I also included other variations in the height of the room, so you can see that these two areas on the side are raised up. And so this height change ended up pretty fortuitous, because it allows us to nestle these barrels, of which we used all of them to store the red sand and related blocks, so definitely needed those, and I'm glad that these were incorporated. Yeah, I most certainly underestimated the number of items in the chests above. And lastly, to avoid obstructing the windows, I kept them free of blocks or kind of hanging things aside from the pillars. That way this area has some nice light, and if you turn on the shaders you can see why this is helpful. Well, maybe not at night, but let me sleep real quick. And so if you're entering the cave during the day, this front part is a little bit dark, but then it opens up to a bit brighter area, and I think this really gives some nice lighting and just like undertone to the cave. And yeah, as you probably saw, I did not get to decorating this area. I'm really undecided as to what to do here. We could definitely use some emerald storage capacity because we've more or less maxed that out over here. So perhaps this could be like a semicircular room, and I could break out this wall and just kind of make this room a little bit better and less monotonous. As you can see, I was really trying to avoid this box shape when designing this other room. So I think this is a pretty good attempt, and I did succeed. And you can see the rays. That looks pretty appealing. In any case, I'll probably just add more barrel storage here regardless of whether or not I break out the wall or not, but certainly that's a project for another time. Oh, speaking of barrels, I certainly leaned heavily on these in this build, mostly for the fact that I think these look so much better than a massive chest monster, and also in accordance with kind of keeping the world a smaller size. It's already 12 GB. I want to be mindful of lag, and I'm sure that having a bunch of chests being rendered is not helpful to that goal. Hence the heavy use of barrels down here. And I gotta say, these are really versatile blocks, even when you're just throwing them into the wall. I do wish that they had the different types of wood variants, but maybe that's something they're cooking up in the background. Regardless, these are super versatile, and I'm going to be using these a lot more as we build things in the world. Oh, and for longtime viewers, yes, I'm kind of breaking my rule of not having a lot of wood in this Alchemy City area because it's a precious commodity, but let's just say I imported all this myself. So more or less, you can think of it like I brought this here and it has nothing to do with the local economy. I did add these chests to these raised areas. Without these, it felt really plain. I also have some in the centerpiece there. But as we continue to build in this area, maybe we can replace this with things like stone cutters or other various tool blocks, what have you, just to make this area a little bit less boring in the absence of chests. But for now, they'll stay. Oh yeah, this is the first build in the world that features mossy stone and mossy cobble bricks. I forgot how much I like these, and I would like to keep using these as we build out this underground portion, especially in the area over there where I would like the grotto to be in the future. So heading above ground, you can see that I decorated this tunnel with a little bit of greenery. I think it gave it a bit more character and is very much in theme with the lush vibes down here. But if we go outside, you can see that I finished this path and allowed it to circle around our workstation, and more importantly, I finished the oasis. So not only did I expand the body of water, I continued the path around and made it so we have another entry point over here where there was an opening to the future tower area. And I would say more than doubled the size of the oasis, maybe not quite triple, but close to it. Like the below room, I didn't have any design template in mind. I just wanted to place it block by block, and so it took a lot longer to detail, which is why it wasn't in the time lapse. Although, maybe if people are interested, I could make a short video of that. But yeah, let's check it out with shaders. Alright, to orient ourselves, okay, so this is north, and so to the west over here, I didn't really change the water structure too much. I did add a lot of detail, so a lot of mossy blocks, adding in a bit more diorite, mud, and a lot of greenery just around the periphery. I figured since this area is kind of sheltered, it wouldn't have a lot of water flow, and so we would see calmer waters and thus more vegetation. In theme with the lush cave, I did use a lot of clay, and I also used a little bit of roots sprinkled here and there. Kept some sand because there would be sand, it's the desert, and I also added some mud. And at the very bottom you can see that I used smooth sandstone to more or less just have a 1-block border from the area below. And the reason I did this is because I do like having the water drip a little bit, and it's not doing it right now, but in any case. So in theme with the lush cave down below, I added some clay as well as some sea pickles. Let's assume these are the freshwater variant, more diorite, and a bit of mud just at the bottom. And as I mentioned before, I wanted to avoid obstructing the glass as much as possible on both sides, such that the storage cellar area below is more or less unobstructed and we have some lighting there in the back part of it. I didn't add another tree. I think it would be worth doing so over here in the future, but as we haven't built out this area yet, I didn't want to create something that would potentially be an obstruction because I'm not really sure as to what kind of layout we want over here. Certainly we'll need a bridge going to the other island in the future. I was thinking this could be residential in nature. And then this area, I would like a port or some sort of dock system over here, maybe some ships, especially over on this peninsula, but in terms of the exact pathing, I'm not really certain. In any case, that was a long-winded way to say that I didn't put the tree there because I didn't want it to block potential things in the future. So we can certainly add that, as it's a little plain over in this region, but I would say that's totally fine for now. Back to this oasis, I don't have too much else to say other than I enjoyed how this turned out. Compared to before, it has a lot more variation, and it certainly helps that we have a lot of blocks to use that one can use for underwater, not necessarily like sea stuff, but freshwater bodies, so like mud, for example. I was playing around with the idea of a diagonal bridge going from there to there, but given the medium size of this oasis, it didn't make a lot of sense, and it was really obstructing the view, and so ultimately I opted just to add a bunch of lily pads as well as drip leaves, such that one could parkour over to the other side if they have better jumping ability than I do. Let me sleep real quick. Yeah, all that to say, I definitely enjoy the use of lily pads over having a bridge, simply because it keeps the body of water from being unobstructed, and it does add a little bit more green, kind of a rich green like the seagrass, to the area. And so I like how this turned out. And you can also see more clearly the details underneath the water, even without shaders, so that's something I really enjoy about the lily pads. Yeah, so with that, I think this area looks way better without the chest monster. Yes, I do have one chest there, but it'll be gone, trust me. Alright, so with that, I think I've shown you everything I built. Kind of ironic that I said we weren't going to build a storage room, but we more or less did to eliminate the massive chest monster here. But that's okay, that's how it goes sometimes. Alright, so with that, there's one other thing that we need to do, and you might have noticed due to the lack of activity in the pond, and that is to release our salmon back to their home. Alright, because I really like these two salmon, I'm gonna name them. So you are Coho, and you are Chinook. Yeah, not very imaginative because those names are indeed based off of the type of salmon that exist. Those are 2 of the 5 types, but I do like how they sound, and I don't know, it's just, I like these fish. They're so cool. They're just chilling. Hopefully these 2 enjoy their new home. Oh, look at that, they have some nice shade, and now they have like mud to mess around with, so hopefully they're enjoying their renovated space. And with that, the chess monster of the Alchemy City is vanquished at last. And I think that's a nice place to conclude today's episode since it has been such a long time since I posted. So I know I say this at the end of every episode, but my apologies for such a long wait in between episodes, and I truly appreciate all of you. To put it succinctly, work has been quite a bit this year, and it doesn't look like things are going to get better until the end of this year. So that's unfortunate, but also how it goes. I was also doing quite a bit of travel, both domestic and international, over the course of this episode, so that didn't help with the productivity. But in terms of good news, I recently purchased a new audio software, and it's really increased my productivity by about 80%, which is quite a bit. In other words, it took about 20% of the usual amount of time to edit the audio for this video. So really big time saver, and I'm glad I purchased that software. Additionally, you might have noticed in the time lapse, but I managed to learn how to use flashback. And this mod is like so nice. Like the audio software, it really increases the throughput of making time lapses, like again by 80% almost. It doesn't crash at all. It started raining, so we're over here now. But not only is the flashback mod really intuitive to use, it gives you really specific control over the duration of the time lapse. And so basically what this amounts to is you can make them with the right timing much quicker than you would with the replay mod. So hopefully this means more short video format content as well as better time lapses. If you do think they were better in this episode, let me know below because yeah, they were not that difficult to make, and I don't know why I'm sneaking around like this in the city. Alright, so with that, I think I've yapped long enough, but before I close, just a reminder to please let me know in the comments if you think we should make a new base closer to new chunks, or continue to work on the surrounding archipelago area here. So in other words, this island, as well as our 2 base islands over here. So yeah, if you could let me know in the comments, that would really help with the series direction. Because yeah, I just want to make content that you all want to watch and are excited for. So closing with that, thank you all for watching, take care, and I hope you have a great rest of your week ahead of you. Until next time.